evening, everybody. All right, so tonight we have two speakers, guests I'll call them. This is going to be more of a conversation. Obviously, that's why I'm sitting. That's why I'm sitting over here and you're sitting here. This is Sasha Lewis, co-founder of Flavor Pill and Flavor Wire, among many other things which we'll get into. Natasha Blank, DJ extraordinaire, and also both of them are the slashes, you know?
I think she's got more slashes.
She's a lot of slashes, but she's younger.
Exactly.
She's like more millennial,
exactly.
Right? It's not even figuring it out. Like they got it figured out.
Fair enough.
The slashes are figured out.
Yeah.
You and me, we got things figured out.
I just got a business card from a millennial, 25-year-old or so, who had 10 titles on her card. One of those twins from the Daybreaker.
Oh, really? So maybe they just have one card between the two of them?
Well, maybe. One of them was that she's an identical twin. That was one of those.
Yeah. That's cool. All right, so here's the point of tonight's experience. It's fun, really. So Sasha just revealed, somebody said to him once that he was what?
In the business of fun.
In the business of fun, and indeed he is. But I started to think before I came here tonight about this class and the format of this program, and we spend a lot of time up here talking about, we're constantly talking about purpose, right? And we're talking about making change happen. But a lot of times it's in the context of work, right? So we've had a lot of people from corporations here. We've had a lot of entrepreneurs and startups, and and both Sasha and Natasha have made their passion their work, and their passion happens to be fun and helping other people get geared up, get your dance on, to have a lot of fun. But I just thought about the culture of a city like New York. Like, people come here from all over the world for all different reasons, and yes, their work is vitally important to what makes this city run. But what we do for fun is also hugely important to the vibe of the culture, right? So if you think of any decade in this city's history, like the nightlife or the cultural institutions, the art museums, or the dance troupes or movements, cultural movements, or those movements that we, I think, traditionally see as sort of like more what we do in our leisure time or what we do for fun, are so important to how the city is running, how it feels physically to be here, right? And one of the things I love about New York that I think a lot of people who are just visiting don't know is what a thriving spiritual culture there is here, what a thriving, like, high vibe culture there is here. It's not just Wall Street, and cocaine at the VIP room, though that can be fun too.
Once.
Right.
I didn't inhale.
Live
Check
through
out
that. So, anyway, Sasha and Natasha are actually friends of mine, and so I happen to know a lot about them. So we thought a conversation would be a nice format. And so we'll start with Sasha. He's going to have to leave early, so I'm going to direct a lot of my questions here at the beginning towards Sasha, and also give you a chance to ask questions like pretty much throughout. If we can just, instead of holding the Q&A, if something strikes you, just go ahead and raise your hand. How many of you are familiar with Flavor Pill? Okay, great. How's that? Is that typical, or?
That's probably I'd say maybe close to 50% if we're lucky. So that's for this age demographic.
Yeah.
And psychographic, I would say, yeah, that's probably about right.
Yeah, and a lot of them are new to New York.
What about Flavor Wire? Because that's now becoming a big sort of RV course in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I would love to hear the difference between them.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say, a lot of the students have come from around the world and are kind of getting to know New York. So if you don't know Flavor Pill, do know it. I think, right,
Yeah,
Josh?
sure.
Yeah. Okay.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
So, the idea. So you want me to give a little background?
Yes.
Okay. So Flavor Pill Media is a online publishing company. We focus on culture. So both at a local level, Flavor Pill is our city guide. So if you're signed up and you know it now or you know the site, it's a guide to what's happening in New York across art, music, film, dance events, parties, anything you can imagine that you're going to do with your free time, with the exception of, say, classes. There are some classes, but we're not focused specifically on classes, because that's now sort of taken off a lot from a cultural perspective. But more nightlife and culture, really. We're all about that. And then FlavorWire is a national site that focuses on arts, culture, pop entertainment. So things that you might see in the New York Times or on BuzzFeed or on Gawker, but coming at it from what we hope is a bit more of a provocative voice, a bit more of a uplifting voice as well. We try to be smart and something that kind of speaks to the positivity of what's happening in the world, although there is a criticism and a critique to it, if need be, but not so snarky and not what we sort of categorize as junk food for the brain. Even though I'm not certainly saying that any of those publications always do that, but there has been definitely a tendency in media, I think now, to try to just grab eyeballs and attention and page views by going to the lowest common denominator. So we're trying to sort of fight back against that trend. Although we fall prey to it as well. I mean,
well, it's a fine line.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, I find it all the time myself, and I stopped throwing stones because I realized, like, sometimes you have to cover something or say something. You gotta get into the fray.
Sure.
A little bit.
Yeah, we have to be part of the cultural conversation now, right? I mean, if you want to be on top of the social media sort of mind of the internet at this point, you have to be topical. You have to be relevant. You have to be in the conversation of what's happening now, and often that can be sort of lowbrow culture or very celebrity driven.
Yeah.
So how do you talk about, Miley Cyrus and twerking in a way where it's not an animated GIF of Miley Cyrus twerking? Let's go beyond that, people. I mean, that's fun for the first hour, and then it gets a little silly. So yeah, it is. There is a fine line for sure, and we try to also be fun and accessible too. I mean, how many of you guys read New Yorker? Yeah. So the New Yorker is an amazing publication, but it's also like something that you have to dig yourself into. You have to be willing to sit there for hours potentially to read an article, and that is sort of in a lot of ways the whole media model, right? It's hanging on because it has such an amazing voice and tells the stories that aren't being told in a way that certainly even more so now you just don't get. But we're in a generation where people want instant information, and it has to be topical, it has to be quick, and it has to be disposable. So we're trying to do both of those things. Still be smart and intellectual, but also be fun and accessible.
And is Elizabeth the editor of FlavorWire?
So yeah, Elizabeth Spires is the managing editor or editorial director of all Flavor Pill Media. So she oversees both FlavorWire and Flavor Pill. And Elizabeth is the original managing editor of Gawker.
Do you guys know of her? She's kind of, I'd say she's a pretty exciting, interesting figure in media.
Yeah.
Right, she's kind of started Gawker, or was
She
really
started-
the voice of Gawker at the
Yeah,
very
she
beginning.
started Gawker with Nick Denton while she was working in Wall Street. I don't know about the cocaine and the other things that you had insinuated before, but she was down at Wall Street. She was in finance. So she was, in a completely different world, and this is probably close to 10 years ago now. I think Gawker's been around that long. And her and Nick Denton, who's now the founder or has always been the founder and still obviously a big part of Gawker, started it in his loft. And they were just banging out posts. I think they were upwards of 30 to 40 posts a day between the two of them.
That's crazy.
So, and who of you are writers? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you blog at all, that's a lot of content.
That's like my annual content.
Yeah, exactly. So
Really
they were pumping it out in a fierce pace, and it worked.
Yeah.
I mean, that was when blogs were
Yeah.
just in its infancy.
Yeah.
So she came on. She was actually running New York Observer. She was running all the content for the New York Observer. made them profitable for the first time in 17 years. And then they started to squeeze her a little bit, and she made this public, so it's fine that I say this. But they squeezed her in terms of budgets. They wanted to get more out of the profit margin, and she's like, this isn't what I signed up for. So we got her. We had wooed her for probably about 4 or 5 years, trying to get her to come work for us, and finally the timing was right. And so she started with us beginning of this year. And our traffic has tripled this year, and our voice has become much stronger, and she's got us writing a lot more from a place of authority and coming from original content. She's really pushing that because if you look at the way the web's trended from a content perspective, it's swinging back. The pendulum sort of swings back and forth on the internet. Because some of you might be old enough to have seen a few of these swings, but I've seen a few. I know you have. You were a part of a couple of them, I think.
I just got this vision.
Yeah. So
It's
even though I said content needs to be fast and disposable, it's also now, because there's so much, right, and we're at a point where we're overloaded with information. It's relevancy and quality that went out. So where are you going to get that from? Where are those trusted resources? I mean, you're going to be looking at your feeds on your social media platforms, and you're going to cherry pick certain things, but you're going to curate based on your friends. You know which friends send you something that's smart and intellectual or provocative, and you know the person who's going to send you the animated GIF. So you're already doing a bit of that, but at the end of the day, the sources that they're coming from, or you start to feel yourself drawn more to those sites that continually have a strong voice, or a voice that you just identify with, whatever that is. So we've really been working on honing in on that, and Elizabeth's done a masterful job with that. It's really helped a lot.
I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm really
one more
picky.
thing I'll just say too, because I know this class there's a social sort of entrepreneurial and sort of element to it. I mean, we fundamentally believe when I started Flavor Pill with my business partner 13 some odd years ago now, we fundamentally believe that culture can have a positive impact on people's lives. And to Skylar's point at the beginning, like when you come to a city and you live in this crazy place like New York or any city, we were just in Portland, we were in Seattle, and Natasha and I travel quite a bit. You're in that city because, for a large part, because of the culture, because of the social life, the cultural options that the city has to offer. Certainly here, it's not because it's inexpensive or because it's surrounded by beautiful forests and trees. You can argue that in Portland, maybe. It's because of the culture that happens around you, the museums, the music, the parties, whatever it is that turns you on culturally. And so for us, getting to that place where we can filter through everything and give a short list of culture, and now it's broader than just events. With FlavorWire, we're talking about books, and we're talking about music, and we're talking about art, we're talking about TV. But that time is so valuable, how you spend it, your free time and what you do outside of work or school, and it's easy to gravitate towards that, as I said before, this junk food for the brain. Just, easy, silly content that is, tastes good going down, but 15 minutes later you have a stomachache kind of feeling like, I just wasted a lot of time doing nothing. So we try to elevate people's awareness around culture and give them better choices, because we feel like that's going to stimulate people to do interesting things with their time. It might create sparks in meeting new people that could end up being hugely interesting collaborations or opportunities to grow as an individual, as a community, and it really inspires, ultimately. And we are in a time of cultural renaissance. I mean, if you think about the great cultural renaissance era, and now you think about where we are now, at no point ever have we had a time where you've had such an access to creativity to promote what you're doing from a creative perspective, the democratization of content, right? I mean, how many of you all have blogs? A few, yeah, okay. So you're all publishers, and then everybody has a Facebook page, right? Of course. Or maybe one person doesn't, right? I do not have a Facebook page. But they had one, and they got sick of it. So, I mean, I'm sure this topic's been discussed already, but you're all brands, right? You're all micro brands, you're all micro publishers. So you now have this power and this voice in a way that was never before, an option for 99.9% of the population.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I are similar age. When we grew up, way back when. You know, everybody watched the same TV shows. Like, in the 50s, not that I grew up in the 50s, but I Love Lucy, right? 75% of the TV audience on Sunday nights watched I Love Lucy. So that means 3/4 of the people who were watching TV watched the same show. Because there was only 2 networks, I think, or 3.
I don't know.
Yeah, so it's just fascinating to think, and that's only, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, whatever it is, that now, we're spread out so far in terms of our interests, in terms of where we get information, in terms of who's creating that content and where culture and creativity can go. So, awesome time to be alive. We should all be very grateful.
Yeah. I would like for you to talk too about some of the events, because there was a time when Flavorville started to design, build. Like, I remember you getting more active in putting forward events.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there were, at the beginning you were just sort of culling and curating what was already going on, and then there came a moment when suddenly we were doing yoga at the MoMA, and then yoga in Brooklyn Bridge Park, and art at some of the early art museum parties, the Guggenheim parties.
Dance parties.
Like, maybe talk about, because I thought I really liked watching you guys grow into that, because I know you personally, I know what your, somewhat what your values are, and the fact that you believe culture is important to growth and can be a positive force. So what happened, and what was it like to start to be behind some of these events? What did you learn?
So, okay, how many of you guys have tried to produce a public-facing event? Not a birthday party, but like an event. Okay, so a lot, right? It's exciting, it's sexy, right? So, what happened when you did it? How hard was it?
Oh my God, it's so hard. It is so hard.
Pushing a big boulder up the
It
mountain,
sure
right? Just a lot of unexpected trials and tribulation to get up there, right? And so we got into the event space a little bit. I mean, we were certainly knowledgeable because we talked about events, but talking about events and curating, saying, hey, go to the MoMA and go to this, or go to this great party at this club, that's one thing, but actually producing it yourself is a whole other undertaking, and ultimately, it's a different business model, right? You need different resources, you need different skill sets, and you really have to look at it separate than publishing is what we were doing and still really do for the most part in terms of our business. But we obviously were excited. We loved culture, so we loved the idea of doing events, and we kind of jumped into it. And early on, we were doing, before we did all the yoga stuff, which we do a lot of now, and we also do fun party. Well, not that yoga's not fun, but we do more nightlife style parties, drink parties where there's cocktails, alcohol, things like that. But for us, it was a natural extension. So it made sense from a brand perspective, right? If you're trying to connect with people, ultimately as sort of a lifestyle brand and publication, it's a great way. If you're talking about culture, talking about events, well, hey, here, come to an event that we're producing and we're creating this experience. So very early on, we did events at the Guggenheim, and we were one of the first to really do the nightlife events at museums. Yeah. So we did First Fridays, it was called, at Guggenheim. I don't know if any ever went. We started that series 2005, maybe, something like that. Who knows who Diplo is? So we had Diplo play like one of his first big shows at the Guggenheim. I booked him. I was friends with him right before he sort of blew up, and I was trying to get him to do the party, and I remember I emailed him and I'm like, hey, you got to do this. It's amazing. We have the Guggenheim. And he's like, what's the Guggenheim? He's like, trust me. I've never played a place like this before. And it was January 5th, I think, 2005 or 2006. So it was this time of the year. It was freezing cold. It was one of those 12-degree nights, and it was the four days after New Year's Eve. So most of us have already kind of done our partying, and almost 4,000 people showed up.
Good God.
We had a line around the entire city block.
So awesome.
including blocking the neighbor, or the people who are the neighbors of the Guggenheim. If you guys know that neighborhood, it's one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city.
Too happy.
And they were not happy at all. They didn't understand what was going on.
Yeah.
The fire marshal came twice.
Yeah.
So it was a crazy scene, and then we were like, oh wow, this works. We should do more parties. So, and it was fun, and it's, you know, it's obviously a big cool factor when you can do stuff like that. So we did that for a long time, and what we did learn from it is that it's probably one of the most engaging ways to connect to your core community, and people still to this day come to us and say, I love those events. I was at that Diplo show, I was at your crazy Halloween party, whatever it may be, or I was at the 10,000 person yoga event at the Great Lawn.
How many people, was anyone here there?
The yoga one?
Yeah, 10,000 people on the Great Lawn. I was there.
We were there.
That was so
It
awesome.
was awesome. Till rain.
Yeah, but even so, like, I think about it sometimes. If you don't know what happened, do you know what happened? Please tell.
So we hosted, we broke a record for the world's largest registered yoga class. There was one in India that was 30,000, but that was sort of more of a spiritual
The
gathering.
Hajj,
This
yeah.
was a
Or
actual event that was, so it was a little bit of a cheat on our side from a world record perspective. But regardless, I have to come clean, right? Still, it was a lot of people. I think we actually had closer to 12,000 people. We couldn't get everybody in the park. It was a little bit of a crazy scene. And this was 2010, so this is almost 4 years, 3.5 years ago. And you guys practice yoga? Yeah, a few. So yoga's obviously just taken off, and now actually there's a lot of big yoga events and a lot of public yoga events, but that was the first of its kind, and we weren't really sure what the hell was going to happen, and we were really not sure if people would show up, but they showed up, and they waited in line to get in, and they got their yoga mats, and we did about 7 or 10 minutes of yoga, and then it started to pour. And we had Reggie Watts, you guys know Reggie Watts?
Yeah.
We had Reggie Watts be our host, and he sung a song.
That guy does yoga?
Well, that was part of the idea. Okay, so that's a good question.
I would have gone just to see that.
There you go. That's exactly why we had Reggie, right? Because we wanted to make it accessible. We didn't want it to just be a bunch of Lululemon wearing yogis. We wanted people like yourself, men, and people who are maybe not in the yoga community to say, wow, I want to go try this. I want to be a part of this. This is an amazing, moment in cultural history in New York. And so that reaction worked, and he sung a song called Yoga Taco, I think, at some point. So if you know Reggie, he just kind of is just a total freestyle, ad-libber type, and he's a genius. And so we had a lot of fun. Yeah, so I mean, we've done amazing events over the years. We're still doing events. If you want, I can send you a link. This Friday, we do an event series now called Lunch Break, and it's 1 hour midday dance parties at clubs. So we take over a club at 12:30 in the afternoon on Friday, and usually Questlove, who I'm sure most of you guys know Questlove. Questlove is our resident DJ in New York. We have different DJs. This week it's Just Blaze, who's a big hip hop producer and DJ, and it's a 1 hour dance party. You get into the club, the lights are on, the smoke machine's going. It feels like it's 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday night, and everybody starts dancing and gets into it, or most people do. I wish everybody would, but most people do. And then right as the hour's over, the lights go on, the music stops, and we give you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and a brown paper bag, and you go back to work or school. So it's really fun, it's disruptive in nature, and I mean, if you're doing events, I think that's one thing Natasha can talk about this when she gets a chance as well. You cannot do what everyone else is doing. It has to have an original feel and energy and vibe to it. Otherwise, it's just never really going to go anywhere, and you're probably not going to be very satisfied with what you create. So the disruptive nature, really simple concept, actually very easy to execute, so it's scalable. We did it in 5 cities this year. Boston, Philly, Chicago, New York, and San Francisco. Wildly successful in all the markets. Huge press, huge social media. It's been a blast. So we'll send you guys the invite and you can come. And it's free. As long as you're over 21, you can get it. Everyone's over 21.
I don't know.
100% on that.
The event
Alright,
itself is free. Are people buying drinks at something? Like, how do you actually line up the venue on something?
So great question. So from a business perspective, which I know this is.
That's what Josh does, by the way.
What's
Ask
that?
great questions.
Ask great questions.
Yeah.
I thought you were
So
going to say business.
it's a sponsored model.
I definitely don't do that.
It's a sponsored model. Absolute Vodka is our partner. Everyone is allowed one cocktail. That's it. Just one.
Wait, is it free coffee?
It's a free cocktail. So you have one. You get one free cocktail, and then you get a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and a cotton bar, and a coconut water on your way out. So that's how it's paid for. It's underwritten by the sponsors, and Absolute gets a tremendous amount of brand value out of it from a PR and social media perspective. We were on Good Morning America, did a piece on it, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Forbes, goes on and on. The list with the media press has been pretty amazing about it. Because it's disruptive and cool and edgy, and it also talks to the next generation of people in terms of how we all want to work, right? As millennials,
Yeah.
as most of you are, and I think I still consider myself a millennial. Or at least
Honorary.
I'm an honorary. It's a psychographic, okay?
Hey, Nancy Lublin was here last week. Do you know her?
No, I don't know that.
She's our age,
Okay.
and she's probably an honorary, like, whatever's after millennials. Honorary middle schooler.
Even better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, why we have to be chained to our desk from 9 to 5?
Yeah.
Why, who says that we can't leave the office? Yeah.
I have a question in the same vein as what Josh was asking. So as someone who's trying to create culture, when you do have a corporate sponsor like that, I do a lot of work in like the underground art scene here, and so a group of my friends was recently approached by an adult beverage company, and there was an event put on, and it was actually like, I mean, it felt like you could just see them with their hands behind their back. Like,
Right.
the event was terrible. And so I'm wondering how you maintain sort of your integrity and the integrity of your event when working with a sponsor who's footing the entire bill.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a challenge, and you got to really hold the line and come from a position of strength as much as you can. So you have to be able to know what you're comfortable with, and then also know what you have to want to push back on. Most sponsors will try to get as much as they can from you, and if you're not willing to stand up for what you need and want, you'll lose that battle, and you'll have your hands behind your back, as you said. So you have clear boundaries and understanding, and then also really trying to be. We try to look at all of our relationships with our sponsors, and that's how we make our money, through advertising, sponsors of events, custom programs that we do. We work with huge brands. Pepsi, we just did a huge program with. We did a partnership with them in Airbnb, right? Absolute, one of the biggest alcohol brands in the world. And so there's a corporate mentality around what they do. It's what they're built to do, right? They have to sell a lot of product, and sometimes the product's not even something that you really morally connect to. So it's challenging, because the ends justify the means in that sense. And Natasha and I are also partners, like partners, like
Life partner.
life partners. Thank you. So she can attest when I leave you. Maybe she'll tell you some stories of how I'm on and grown sometimes when I'm having to come home and realize, like, Pepsi, what?
Yeah.
Sugar water. But I believe that what we are doing ultimately is good for people, and you need support from big corporations to make this work. I wish Seventh Generation and Tom's Shoes and all these companies were as big as Pepsi. And
Ultimately, maybe they will be.
Ultimately, maybe, but right now, they're simply not.
Yeah.
They don't spend the marketing money that you would need for, if you go to most of your favorite websites, look who's advertising continuously, it's big corporations. They're the ones that have big
I think there's a sea
budgets.
change happening now.
I really want to believe it. And I've met with Tom's, and I've met with Seventh Generation, and all the like-minded companies you could imagine that are doing good in the world, that also you align with from just the DNA perspective in terms of their products. There's things happening for sure. But at the end of the day, if you look at just from a pure business perspective, you look at the top 50 advertisers in the world. They are huge corporations.
Yeah.
Not to say that some of them aren't doing good. I mean, Pepsi has done some good in the world recently.
Sure,
There's some interesting ways in which these companies are becoming more socially minded, and we try to push them in that. So, for example, small win, Absolute lunch break. To kind of go back to your question, with Absolute, when we do it, every event we have, there is a nonprofit component, right? So we have a local food bank present, and we take donations for people, for local food banks in different cities. We've raised over $10,000 this summer around it. great way to say, look, we recognize that this is a commercial event and that there's also people probably as you walk outside this building at this club that are on the street who don't have anything to eat. So let's not be completely unaware of that fact. So you know, you got to find your ways to balance it out. But if you want to work with sponsors more often than not, there has to be a win-win for everybody. Otherwise, it's not going to work long term. So that's really just finding that balance and really clearly defining it as what it is that you're comfortable doing.
I want to take it to, yeah, how you doing? I think I'm going to pick up. That's fine, because I want to talk about dancing anyway.
Oh, perfect.
No, I do, because I think part of what's intriguing about the lunch break is that it's disruptive and it's like, why do we have to work 9 to 5? But I also think there's something big happening with dance at the moment. And Natasha, can you just describe what your dance on?
Yes, well, it's evolved a lot over the last 4 or 5 years, or I mean, Sasha and I actually started it together, and then I sort of took the reins. But our first Get Your Dance On event was at Brooklyn Bowl when it first opened at 10 in the morning on a Saturday in the middle of a snowstorm, and 10 people came.
I was there.
You were?
I'm sure I was there. I come to all those Brooklyn Bowl events. I had a new baby. I was like, 10 a.m. is perfect. I've been up since 5 a.m.
Nobody did one at 10 a.m.
I was there. I was there. Remember the snowstorm?
that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So,
Fail fast, right?
Yeah.
You got it right away.
Yeah.
That's not the right model.
Yeah, there weren't
Change
that
it up.
many people there, but we danced hard.
Yeah.
Those who were there.
yeah, it was, we made the best of it, that's for sure. And then and we did it weekly there. It was a free event, nobody got paid, we just did it to do it. We moved it into the afternoon so that more people would come. And once we had something, we took it to Yoga Works, which had just opened a new space in Soho. And we were like, we have this thing, can we do it here? And you guys can give away free yoga classes and it'll promote the studio. And they were like, sure, use our space for free for a year. So it was about monthly for a year that they let us use it for free. And it became, that studio is huge, it's got 3 rooms, and there was like 1 room with a DJ and 1 with live music, and then 1 that was a chill space, and we had like food and beverage sponsors, and it was
But no alcohol, right?
no alcohol. We had wine for a little bit, but then we got rid of it because it wasn't really needed.
Yeah.
Get high on your own supply.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's ultimately
Yeah.
the message, a little bit. That I mean, it's fine, but it's not necessary.
Yeah.
Well, also it's disruptive too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the idea is you can go to any club or any bar and you can always get alcohol. That's the easy part. What if you go to an event that there is no alcohol?
And you have to dance like a crazy person.
Right, and you appeal to the people who like to dance like crazy people who
Yeah.
actually don't want the alcohol or don't
Yeah.
need it, or it doesn't, the vibe isn't right, and all of that stuff. So, and it worked. It's still working.
I
Yeah.
know. And it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
But so, okay, so from the yoga studio.
Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Sorry to have to run. Hope to see you guys on Friday on the dance floor.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. You guys have an amazing teacher. You're very lucky to be working with someone like that.
Yeah, but speaking of things being financially viable, and of course I couldn't go to an absolute or a product sponsor of that who'd be into this little like
Yoga
barefoot
party.
yoga party. It was never profitable, and so I was putting in tons and tons of work and never really seeing anything real from it. Like here and there, there'd be like scraps, but it was pretty negligible. And I noticed that being sort of the entrepreneur owner of this thing, I was employing people who had jobs. And I was like, well, what if I was one of those people who had a job? So I decided to learn how to DJ because I got sick of paying other people to DJ. And I've always had a huge relationship with music. I'm a dancer, I've been a dancer forever, and I had a huge music collection. There was like really no good reason that I already wasn't. So it was a good motivation to learn. And since I did that and actually stepped into the position of being my own brand as opposed to creating this Get Your Dance On thing that I was sort of behind the scenes and have started to step out more with my own name and doing other parties, my other parties that are mine and also other people's parties, it's become a lot more sustainable for me, and I can actually see it's like, oh, this works much better.
Yeah.
And we have started a new party called the Get Down, which is sort of what really closer to what Get Your Dance On's intention always was, which was bridging these two worlds of yoga, high vibe party people who don't drink at all, and the club world, which I was also totally part of, and Burning Man and festival culture and all of that stuff, and bridging them and making it so that you could really take the best of both and have them in one place. So we created the Get Down at Cielo, which has the best sound system in New York.
It's awesome. Has anyone been there? Cielo? No?
What is it?
Yeah.
It's a club,
Yeah. It's cool.
amazing sound.
And a nice size and space.
Yeah,
It's
it's-
not like, it's not huge. It's pretty intimate.
Yeah, it's a good.
What's that?
It's in Chelsea, it's a little West Wall Street. And so for that, there is a bar, you know, people, like, I could never get anyone from Flavor Pell to go to Get Your Dance On when I was at a yoga studio and barefoot. And now the whole freaking team comes after work because there is a bar, so there is that like, okay, I know what this is, it's not totally alien, and yet these other people are dancing like maniacs, and it's only 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So it sort of segues them into this other world. And I mean, the last one we had, it felt like 4 a.m. at Burning Man at like 8:30
Wow.
at night, which was pretty special.
I haven't made it. I'm so bummed. But talk a little bit about, because what I've always been attracted to in your parties is, so we met through Sasha, of course, but also at 5 Rhythms, which I've talked a lot about here, which is no alcohol, barefoot. So this is that sort of, you know, was inspired in part by 5 Rhythms. What is it that dance, and Natasha blogs a lot for like Elephant Journal and some others.
Occasionally, yeah.
But I love your writing. She's a really great writer, and you sometimes write about what dancing does for you or what it means. So maybe talk about why dancing is having a moment, do you think? And also, just quickly, sorry, that was like 9 questions, but you get the gist.
Don't remind me.
Are you still doing the year of dancing every day?
Well, that's over.
It's done. You did that.
Yeah. And so I'm not like, last year I was like, I'm gonna dance every day for a year. And it was originally actually, this is a good segue. It was originally about, because I was like, these events I'm producing, like, it's my passion, but it's not clicking, and it's not the thing that I need to be doing. But I do know that dance is what I love, and it's what my life is supposed to be about. So I'm just gonna show up every day for it and see what happens. And it was originally gonna be like, I was gonna go out every night or to a class or to a club and blog about it and become like the go-to person about dance. But instead what happened was, I think just the act of dancing helped me through that transition, and that's when I started to DJ and started stepping out in a more public way and sharing my music and facilitating classes and playing at clubs and really sort of altering my public identity. And just the act of dancing so much helped me integrate that within myself.
That's great. But so why is dance having such a moment? Do you think it's having a moment? I sort of planted
I
that idea.
definitely do.
Yeah.
In a lot of different ways, in the EDM and festival culture, and like sort of the rave thing is being revived in this weird way. And then also the conscious dance scene and like 5 Rhythms-esque classes are becoming more and more often and more places.
Ecstatic dance.
Ecstatic dance, soul motion, there's like all these different modalities now.
What are those things?
So, the thing they share in common is that you're probably going to be barefoot, you're probably not going to be talking, it's going to be sober, and it's has a meditative quality of sorts. Sometimes it's facilitated by a teacher who gives you cues about reminding you to be in your body in certain ways or give you suggestions about how to move deeper, but the intention is to really just go deeper into yourself through music and movement. And that's sober, of course, and a lot of I think the dance that happens around the EDM scene is influenced by substances. But I've written a lot about how it's kind of ironic because dancing itself can have that mind-altering effect on your brain in a very real way if you let yourself go there and you're in the right container for it. But that's not taught and it's not really known, so I don't think people, like if you don't know the road is there, you don't walk down it. And if this road of taking ecstasy or psychedelics or whatever is known, it's more accessible and it's easier.
Yeah.
And for me that was actually the doorway to this whole
The
world.
drugs?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
cool. Yeah.
it worked for me, but
Yeah.
really the first time I had an amazing experience dancing under the influence, I was like, I know this is accessible,
Wow.
sober,
Wow.
and I'm gonna dedicate my life to learning how to get there.
That is so cool.
And that led me to find 5 rhythms, and that became just a way to practice that.
Yeah.
And then that inspired Get Your Dance On and sort of set off that chain of events.
I think that's yeah, that's what I sort of see both you and Sasha as. Like, I feel like if more people knew the states that you could achieve without the drugs, then you would have sort of wow, what a world that would be, right?
Yeah.
And it feels like a lot of the parties that you guys are doing, what I really like about your work is that you are very pragmatic about, like you heard it in the way Sasha was talking about, like, okay, we do this party, it didn't work when there was no alcohol, it's like, so, it feels like you're kind of in a position to bring some people along a little bit, like Sasha said, I wish those people would dance.
Yeah.
And I see them, they're there, we've gotten them there, they're
Yeah.
close to the dance floor now, and now it's just like stepping on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, so what are some trends in, like, where is the dance thing headed, or do you think it's just gonna build steam, more people getting into it, or?
It's a conversation happening in the DJ community at large, because in that conversation is electronic music just a phase? Is it what hip hop was in the 90s? Is it what like rock and roll was in the 70s? And I don't know, it might be. I certainly don't like a lot of it. Some of it I love. But I think that I think one of the reasons that dubstep got so big was because there is this really chaotic energy in our society, and the younger generation needs a way to like get it out and express it, and so that's why.
So what's the beat of dubstep, and did we ever get us hooked up to music?
My SoundCloud is hooked up, so I
Could you play a little dubstep?
I could find dubstep.
Okay, let me hear a little. Because I think this is part of what I wanted Natasha to talk about, is that the different rhythms, we're working with rhythms all the time, right? And so there's a healing potential in different rhythms, and I don't know what dubstep is, so I'm looking forward to it.
Let's see.
What's it? In for a surprise? Excellent, I can't wait.
Well, I'll put on Skrillex because he's gotten so big, and his sound is that like really chaotic thing. And in 5 rhythms, you do these 5 rhythms, which are flow, staccato, chaos, lyrical, and stillness. And that rhythm of chaos is this peak where everybody's like totally opened up, and anything you've got to let go of, you let go. People go nuts. So I'm not familiar with this music at all. So we'll see what happens. I think it's all the way up. Oh, all the way.
Yeah.
the drum is really slow, and that's your beat. And then the bass is actually double time. And when you see kids laughing to this, they just go really big. When you say kids, how old are they? Well, teenagers really are the people that have gotten super into aerobics and things like that. Yeah.
So, awesome. Thank you. Stay there, please. So the other thing that you will notice if you do dance 5 rhythms and then you go to any other dance party, this happens to me all the time now, is like, it's like people want to just start like out of the gate, like that, you know? And there's kind of a natural flow of energy, right, when you've got a party. And so as a DJ who's attuned to these things, like, is there a way you get people, like, how attuned to you are you to the energy of the crowd and like moving people onto the dance floor?
It's everything. It's like any good DJ is, where it's a dance party, is focused on the crowd and how they're responding and understands that there's sort of like a seduction process.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same in marketing and getting people's attention and really any medium. I sort of incorporate the same principles
Yes.
in my newsletters and
Yeah, great newsletters. Totally sign up for her newsletters. I'm very I'm very critical of newsletters, but I read Natasha's every week.
awesome.
But that's seduction, and this is like, we're not just here to, what we're talking about is metaphoric, right? Because, and when I asked Sasha and Natasha to come here, I was like, a lot of you are ultimately going to be seducing people to come to do whatever you want them to do. You know, buy something like this, you know, whatever you're making, or believe in whatever cause you're, supporting or you've started. Like, there is an art to getting people, and Sasha and I talk about this a lot, getting people off their butts and onto the dance floor of whatever you're trying to do. The other thing I'll say is sometimes people don't ramp up, and like they're immediately into the, into the thick of it, and sometimes they never reach chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also really frustrating. I had a friend, Arana, come to me on a dance floor one night that was not like the DJ wasn't totally tuned in, and she's like, "Can you please get them to play chaos? Can we get to chaos, please?" Because we were all just like stuck in this place of probably staccato, and we just wanted to like one more level.
Yeah.
So
I've never played my music and talked about what I'm thinking about when I'm playing, when I put things together, but I'll try this out. So like, this is the most recent one from CLO. And a big part is trust. People aren't going to listen to you and spend the time, like take the time to go on a journey with you if they don't trust you. Take them somewhere. So this, and you also have to meet them where they're at. So I'm not going to blast them with some crazy thing where it's going to like hit them and they can't receive it. But you can feel something's coming.
something is funny.
And actually,
Beautiful. There's so many layers.
fun fact, the guy who was the bathroom attendant, I guess, speaks whatever language, and it's there's something about it. It pulls you in. And it's pretty.
If you feel like dancing,
Like I could not have dropped this at the very beginning. It would have been like, what's happening? But when you have their attention, they're in it.
But it's also trusting other people on the floor with you, right?
Yeah,
I always find like you have to warm up together.
yeah.
And you see how far people will let you go, and then I don't know, like, think of when you've been dancing and you see someone else totally bug out. That's a great feeling, like you feel safe. Just like that too, and you gotta get there together.
Yeah. And it's all energy.
Yeah.
Like it's all just working with their energy and the energy of the sound. Whatever. Lighting. You want me to play like a moment of
Yeah, let's go to chaos. We gotta go to chaos and then.
I do it a little differently than like a violin.
Okay.
Well, I also like, yeah, what I can. So this is like the middle of the set. If I play this in the beginning, even though it's when I drop this in the beginning, like, it's like the root that is like your crazy other like jungle. And like,
Merde, si c'est ce genre de fête, je vais foutre ma bite dans la purée.
quiet for this.
One universal connection.
Everybody wanna go see Natasha now? Yeah. Woo! Okay, now do you guys have questions? Because I have questions, but I always have questions. Questions about getting people moving, about, yeah.
I was wondering what type of genres you play, just out of curiosity, with the gig you're dancing on, with the.
Well, you just heard an overview of the most recent set.
Okay.
I was a lot more eclectic until a few months ago, and I realized that I was trying to sort of please everyone and play things that I was thinking a lot about other people and what they would want, which is interesting because usually when you're in business, you want to fill a need or create something that there's a demand for. But then you look at somebody like Steve Jobs,
Right.
nobody was asking for an iPod. It was really that he just wanted to make the best product that he knew that he could make. And so I've had a pretty big shift into playing music that I really love and really owning the sound that I believe in. And people have really responded to it in a big way.
Do you find more women or men gravitate towards, like, do you find any gender interest?
When I do classes, which are smaller, and we'll do yoga before and after we dance, it's more women, for sure. But at CLO, like when we get into the club environment, it's pretty even. Maybe a little more women, but it feels like it doesn't feel disproportionate at all. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a house question.
Yes.
I just recently learned how to new style hustle from Jeff Shelby. Do you know him?
I know of him.
Do you know how to hustle?
No. Will you teach me?
You want to try?
Okay.
Okay, come here.
the coolest new thing.
Oh my
ever.
god, like partner dancing is come back.
It's the hustle.
The 1920s.
Or for anyone from the
All right, I kind of
south.
suck
we
at
did it.
leading, so we'll take it.
That's it. That's all I said.
Oh my god. Yeah, see? We'll go
I'm
to
old
we're
enough
going to
to
CALO
see
and
that.
we're gonna
My father was a really big dancer. He used to wear the zoot suits and the stuff, and he went dancing every Friday.
Awesome. So
And
cool.
like, and when I was a kid, he made me all. My mother didn't like to dance, so all his daughters. But I'm not as good as my sister, who is a huge two-stepper and a swing dancer.
Wow.
So, yeah. It's fun. It's good stuff.
Okay, well, I would encourage you to get on Flavor Pill, get on Flavor Wire, definitely get on Natasha's email list because you give this music away.
Yes, I record most of the things that I play and send them out.
What
Yeah.
is the list again?
Oh, you're DJ Natasha Blank now. Right?
Yeah. If you guys want to give me your emails, I can just drop them on my list. I have an email list. I feel like maybe that's the best.
Okay. We can do that. We can start a list. All right. So this is meant to be fun and light and metaphorical. I will tell you this because both of these people are very modest. The culture that they're facilitating is so incredibly rich, important, also hip, totally hip. I mean, I've been to potlucks at their house where incredible people who later blow up, you know, do poetry, like spoken word poetry in the middle. I mean, just really, and at these gatherings, there's a lot of meditation, there's a lot of intention, there's a lot of talking very openly. There's a lot of thought put into what's going on, and it's really, really good to have you here doing your thing.
And also just that makes me think of, you know, it's not just that we want to have fun and it's for the sake of fun, but we believe in fun as a path to improving the world. And I feel like if we got heads of state together and got them dancing, no joke, like it sounds funny because it's so ridiculous because we're so cut off from each other and we think we're so separate and different. But if we got together and danced and unified in the fact that we're all human beings with bodies that can listen to sound and respond to it with movement and joy.
Children do it all.
That exactly, that we're all the same and we've just forgotten that. And I think that's the biggest rift that needs healing today.
I actually have a question. How do you encourage people to work out their comfort zone? Like, who's going to be the one dance first?
Well, I usually just suck it up and am the one dancing first. But I mean, I think one of my most recent emails was about doing something that scares you every day. That's something I've been trying to do and really discovering that fear and resist, like, usually, unless there's a tiger chasing you or something with a gun and like you're in mortal danger, fear is actually an indication that you're headed in the right direction. And it's a clue that thing is worth doing. I'm producing my first music video in January, which I'm pretty stoked about. And there was this kid dancing at a basketball game we went to, and and Sasha was like, and he was incredible. He was like 13 years old, and I danced like a 30-year-old African woman.
You do?
No, he did.
Oh.
He was like so natural,
Oh, really?
like fluid. I've
Wow.
never seen anything like it. And Sasha was like, "You need to go talk to him." And I was like, "I don't feel like it. Like I don't know. I don't want to weird him out. It didn't feel good." And I realized it wasn't such a big deal, but it was a very clear moment of like, that's resistance. That's just me not wanting to step outside of my comfort zone and do something that could lead to something awesome. So I in that moment wound up doing it, and it was an awesome connection. So yeah, it's a good.
Is he in the video?
Well, we don't know yet. He's in Portland, so this was in Portland, so we're shooting more.
Also, it helps to have friends
Yeah.
who dance. Like wherever they go, there are always at least those 10 people, and now
Yeah.
many more who have no problem getting on the dance floor. And as soon as you see it, you'll.
Yeah, and just realizing that like nobody's watching you. Nobody's paying as much attention to you as you are. So like it's really not such a big deal once you just sort of get over that hump of, oh, this makes me uncomfortable. Like really, what is that discomfort? Once you do it, you won't feel it anymore. Or maybe you will, but you realize that it doesn't hold you back.
Do you remember your first DJ gig?
Yeah. It was at like this weird warehouse party, like 2 years ago. And I was so freaking nervous. And the guy who's supposed to come on, I like planned out my whole set, and the guy who's supposed to come on after me was an hour late. So then I had to come up with all of these like other things that I hadn't practiced, and I was like still kind of figuring it all out. And it didn't matter. It wasn't perfect, and it didn't matter. Like people still loved the songs that I was playing, and if I listened to it, I'm so glad I didn't record it because it was probably not like what I heard. But people still had a great time, and I did it. It was like getting that first one out of the way. After every gig, I realized what I would have done better, and so it's like just constantly evolving and realizing that I'll probably never be satisfied or think it was perfect. But
Yeah, it just occurred to me. I was just talking to somebody today about, we have a big meeting we're going to be doing, a big workshop at Microsoft, Mike and me, coming up next week. And he was describing an event he'd been to, like some innovations company invited him to like plan the future of the car kind of meeting. Like they invited all these like cool hip inventor types to do a brainstorm, and he's like, oh, it was awful, it was so awful. And he described all these reasons it was awful. And one of the reasons he described was no one was holding the space. And we were talking about how important it is for us as we're orchestrating these meetings. Like, we work on ourselves to be attuned, to be present, to be able to hold the space so that people, even in a meeting, dance floor, meeting, feel like there's someone at the turntables who's going to take you on a journey, that you trust them. I mean, all of these things, and practice makes perfect, You're not perfect at first, but, you get better and better.
About the presence, too. And know it, like, just being there and being connected to the audience. And nobody else notices if I mess up. It's really not about that. It's about the connection.
Yeah.
Together. Yeah.
That's there was a couple weeks ago. I was at this show in Williamsburg with Viceroy. He was like a DJ, and he had a few openers for him who literally just like sit up there behind their computers. And then he was there, and it was like you were in this together. It was kind of like we're here to have fun together, and it's a party. And it was like night and day what it felt like to actually be in a room with the person who is interested in making sure that you are actually having a good time. That was the first time that I'd ever been like so aware, because they were right back to back.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, we were talking before about like having fun as a path to improving the world, and just this past weekend I did my first 5 rhythms workshop.
Awesome.
And I loved it. And what I found really amazing was the connection you have with people, even though no one's watching you and you're not watching them necessarily. just from being together and experiencing that sort of thing, the connections you build. And I was just wondering, in your own work, or if you're planning anything where it's more towards the connections between people rather than just the dancing. And just building upon, like using the dance as a tool for connecting people. You think?
Like off the dance floor, you mean?
No, like, well, during and after, just like as a starter for something bigger.
That's a really interesting question. I mean, the one new project that I'm working on is this video, which is a remake of a recently released video, and we're gonna have everybody dancing in it, and it's kind of taking this idea of everybody dancing badly, and we're using the hashtag Team No Regrets, because that's one of the words in the song. No regrets, and creating sort of a social movement to get people to record themselves dancing badly or weirdly or however they want, and using the hashtag Team No Regrets, just in order to really put more of that idea of doing the things that scare you, stepping outside of your comfort zone, whether it's, and using dance as sort of like the impetus or the metaphor for that.
Yeah,
Have
you seen the
special that way.
Yeah.
Have you seen the? I think it has to do with we watched it from one of our classes. Brene Brown, one of her TED talks. I think it has a lot to do with just like stepping out of her comfort zone and being vulnerable.
She wrote Daring Greatly. Yeah, she's amazing. That book, Daring Greatly, is worth reading hugely.
Alright, I'm gonna wrap it up because we have to go and you guys have finals and like a million things to do, right? We have one more class next week. It's gonna be the Lories, and I'm looking forward to it. I don't know them, I don't know their work. But thank you so much, Natasha.